What's up, Fanatics? Bill Parcells once famously said, "You are what your record says you are." By the Parcells model, the Pittsburgh Pirates are pretty darn average. I'm Tim Clark, and you're listening to the Musings of a Sports Fanatic, a podcast found exclusively here at PennSports.live. So we're going to get into baseball. Is at the halfway point. The Pirates have played 81 games. Before I get into that, always like to give. Let me hit the applause button. I want to give FeedSpot my weekly applause. Thank them for always pushing my podcast. And go to FeedSpot. Lots of cool podcasts that you can find there. It's a neat site. Has all kinds of different stuff from all over the place. So check out FeedSpot. All right. So baseball, specifically the Pittsburgh Pirates. Um, I bought my new City Connect hat. Um, look, I'll be the first one to admit I'm as pessimistic as any Pirate fan you'll find. However, because it's been since 1979, I'm dying to see the Pirates be good again. So every chance or every little glimmer that they give you, I admit that I perk up a little bit and start believing that maybe this is the year. Now, they're 41 and 40. So they're a game above 500. And as Parcells said, I can look at the fact that they have the third best OPS in baseball at 746. Um, I can look at the fact that they have the reigning Cy Young Award winner on their pitching staff. And he is followed up by four guys that are, a lot of teams would like to have. I can look at their run differential here. Let me pull it up. Um, plus 27. The team ahead of them in the National League Central, St. Louis, is -1. So I can look at the numbers and suggest to you that the Pirates should be better than they are. But then all I have to do is point those two fingers that I've been pointing since spring training. I hate when I'm right about bad things about my teams. I told you since spring training the defense was going to be disastrous. It has been, and that the bullpen was going to be bad, and it has been. And you couple those two things. Someone, I think it was North Shore 9, give them a shout out on Twitter, posted the defensive lapses when Paul Skeens is on the mound. Now, I'm not going to go into, I've ad nauseum told you that I think Paul Skeens is a notch below where he should be. Um, and I saw someone say what I've been saying for 2 months now. He throws too many non-competitive pitches. That's really my biggest issue. I can live with the less miles per hour on the fastball, although I think it's led to players being able to, at a bare minimum, foul pitches off and run his pitch count up. Um, but I can live with that. It's just that he throws so many non-competitive pitches, and then you get to the fifth inning, and you're like, "Holy cow, he might only have one more inning." Paul Skeens, you need to go seven minimum, like Braxton Ashcraft is doing. Um, but you can point to all these things. The improved offense, the starting pitching, and all that. But they're 41 and 40. And I saw Brandon Lowe refer yesterday. He said, hopefully we got those unfortunate losses out of our system. Are they unfortunate, Brandon, or is it because your defense isn't any good and your bullpen can't hold leads? What is it, 17 blown saves? My God, if they just had 10 blown saves, which is still not very good, think about that. That would be 48 and 33. They'd be about 2 games behind the Brewers in the standings if their bullpen was just marginally competent. But they are who they are. 16 and 16 in April, 16 and 12 in May, and 9 and 12 so far in June. They have three against the Reds, who are below them in the standings. So they've, certainly 2 out of 3 is mandatory, and a sweep would certainly help, because then they go to Philly to end the month and run into the month of July. they've already shown that they couldn't beat the Phillies at home. Um, so it is what it is. Um, and it's frustrating because you do look at that offense, and then they have the bad luck too. You throw in bad luck. The Connor Griffin and O'Neal Cruz injuries have really, because now you're forced to play. Oh God, I can't even, it almost sickens me to say the name, but you're forced to play Jared Triolo every day, and you get the. When they were in Colorado, they had two games where they load the bases in the ninth inning, and by God, wasn't the bottom of the lineup up. And Tyler Callahan, I know, struck out in the one at bat, and he's a great bench guy. I can live with Tyler Callahan being a bench guy, spot starter here and there. He had that big game with the two home runs. But he's a bench player. And then Triolo grounds into a double play. And then the next day, I forget, maybe Ozuna was, I can't remember, but I feel like the bottom of the order was up again. And on days Henry Davis catches now, had a great day yesterday, and good for him because, again, I root for him. I think he raised his average into the 140s. Hey, golf applause for that, Henry. I root for him, but on days he catches and Triolo's in there, and then they've been playing Jake Mangum. And Jake Mangum, I don't have a problem with. He's a spark plug kind of guy, although he does so many stupid things. He runs the bases like a little leaguer. That part I can't figure out. But he'll run through the wall in the outfield if need be to catch a ball. He does all that stuff that annoys the opposing pitcher, bunts and hits those little choppers through the hole, or with two strikes, he'll just slap one somewhere. I don't have a problem with him, but if he's so now you've got, like, he would be your 9 hitter if your lineup is at full strength with Griffin and O'Neal Cruz. Well, if O'Neal Cruz is healthy, Mangum's probably not playing. So I take that back. But you get my point. So now you've got Mangum, Triolo, and Henry Davis. Now, if Andy Rodriguez is catching, that improves that by one spot. But, as luck would have it, they loaded the bases and they got to the bottom of their lineup there in Colorado, and that's just, it's death. And so, you look at it, and then I look in the standings here, and this will, we can talk a little bit about baseball in general, but in the National League, the Phillies are closing in on the Braves, and the Phillies are only a plus. So there's +4 Phillies, and they're 45 and 36. The Pirates are +27, and they're 41 and 40. And I always, we text, my buddies text back and forth, and my friend Scott texted about them winning. I said, yeah, they're scoring a bunch of runs the other night. I said, yeah, they'll score 11 tonight and then 1 tomorrow. Now, as it turns out, they scored more than 1 the next day. But you get my point. They're getting that run differential up because they'll score 11 in a game, 10 in a game, 9 in a game. But then the next 3 games, it's 2, 2, 3, and they lose those games. So, you can't always just look at that, but it does tell you something. And I said last week on the podcast, I look at the Phillies stats, and I don't know how they do it, but they beat the Nationals 3 games in a row in the 9th inning with home runs. And, I know the veg heads that sit in their basement with all the advanced metrics and statistics say there is no such thing as clutch, but I think the Phillies have clutch. Now, maybe not in the playoffs, as my Philly fans will remind me, but that's clutch to come up in the 9th inning, 3 games in a row, 3 different guys. Now, Schwarber, you expect it from. Harper, you expect it from. But who was it, Derek Hill or David Hill or some Hill that they called up because Garcia, their big free agent pickup, is done for the year, and he was really done at the beginning of the year too. That's clutch. Like, to do it 3 games in a row, I'm sorry, that is clutch hitting. You have other teams that strike out in those situations. So, I look at that, and so the Phillies could still potentially catch the Braves. I said I thought the Braves had it wrapped up. The Brewers had it wrapped up. The Dodgers had it wrapped up. I still think I'm pretty safe with the Brewers and Dodgers, But I am starting to wonder if the Phillies might catch the Braves. But one way or the other, both those teams are making the playoffs. So let's say right now in the standing, the Phillies are the wild card. So there's one wild card spot. The Padres have been dreadful. Manny Machado has been dreadful. Fernando Tatis has been dreadful. The kid in center field has not been good. Um, but they stayed around 500, and now they're 5 games over 500. And you better believe that Tatis, Machado, and I'm drawing a blank on the kid in center field, but they're going to pick up the pace. Certainly, Machado and Tatis have the track record. And so I have to assume the Padres are going to grab one of those wild card spots. So that only leaves one wild card spot. And the Cubs now have hit one of those streaks. They've had a lot of good streaks, and then they've had those 2 bad streaks factored in there. My eyes tell me the Cubs aren't great, but then I look, their run differentials plus 37, and they're on these, they've had at least 3 really good stretches in the first half of the season. So maybe my eyes are a little bit wonky. Maybe they're not seeing straight. So the Cubs are 3 games ahead of the Pirates in the wild card standings and the NL Central for that fact. So the debate was, well, what should the Pirates, are they really contenders? And I mean, I want to say they can still make a wild card spot, but that's a lot of teams. And that's the Miami Marlins are ahead of them, St. Louis is ahead of them, and Arizona is ahead of them. So not only, they're 3 games behind the Cubs for that final wild card spot, but then there's also about 4 other teams they'd have to hurdle just to catch up to the Cubs, and then they'd have to hurdle them. And so, I said it. You guys that listen weekly know it. I said it a month ago. Go get yourself some bullpen help. Go call Boston and ask them what it will take to pry Aroldis Chapman from Boston, who no longer needs him, and they're definitely going to trade him. And maybe you jump in early. You've got the prospects to do it. But now the season's at the halfway point, and we're essentially, give or take, a month away from the trade deadline. And when you look at those standings, now, if you're the Pirates, you're saying, hey, when we get Cruz and Griffin back, and Griffin's coming soon, when we get Cruz and Griffin back, that's going to help out. But they're not going to fix the pitching. The starters don't go. Bubba Chandler had a decent start again, 5 1/3. That's not long enough. You are now putting that bullpen in jeopardy. You are now forcing Don Kelly, who, by the way, everyone that's ripping Don Kelly, and look, we all, as fans, we all rip the manager. Heck, I question some things that Chuck Tanner and Jim Leland did, who are the 2 best Pirate managers of my lifetime. Murtaugh, but I was so young, I didn't really understand the game when he was there. But you question every manager every once in a while, like, oh man, he's pinch hitting that guy, that kind of stuff. So I question Don Kelly on some stuff, but what do you want him to do? The starters, maybe it is the pitching coach. I hear a lot of people criticizing Murphy. The pitcher is one of the new pitching coach, and he may or may not have been sort of a hand-picked guy by Skeens and the pitching staff. But what do you want? What do you want Don Kelly to do? He's got to bring somebody in. And don't forget the general manager's hamstringing him too on this Majinski thing. Instead of using Majinski as just a bullpen piece, who would be better than a lot of the options out there. I don't think Majinski's great, but he'd be better than 3 or 4 of those other guys in the bullpen. But I think the GM is placating Majinski by having him be a piggyback guy. So that he pitches multiple innings because he wants to be a starter. I'd have traded him. The second he bitched about going to the bullpen, he'd have been done. I'm going to trade you to Colorado. Let's see how your average stuff plays in that ballpark. So the GM's hamstringing him, and the fact that the bullpen is just putrid, he's got to bring somebody in. That's what it's, when the pitchers are done in the 5th inning or the 6th inning, he is forced to bring people in. And even his back end makes me nervous. Gregory Soto is striking out less guys this past month. Now, he did have, I think, two strikeouts here the other day, but that has not been the norm. And he's getting, he gets himself into trouble. He's gotten some double play balls, but the other day, it was a routine double play because the guy smoked the ball at the second baseman. Like he's getting hit hard. He makes me nervous. Um, if you get Chapman, now all of a sudden Soto's your setup guy, and at least that it's a little bit better. Um, or remember what I said when Jared Jones came back? He was going to be on an innings restriction this year, coming back from it was 300 and some odd days since he had pitched. So, or was it 600? Maybe it was 2 years, whatever it was. It was a long time since he had pitched. I said, how about making a deal with him? Say, Jared, we're going to use you as the closer, and we'll get you. We'll get you. You can pick your music. We'll get you some cool, entrance. Um, and then at the end of the year, we'll revisit what we want to do with you and what you would prefer to do. Maybe maybe a year as a closer, he would have been like, "Hey, this is kind of cool." Um, he's a young guy. Maybe that's like, "Hey, this is pretty cool." And closers get paid too. Now, not as many of them get paid like starters. Um, or you revisit and say, okay, next year we're going to put you back into the rotation. We got you going again. But they could have. They something needs to be done. Now, obviously, they're not suddenly going to move Jones to the bullpen and be the closer. So they've got to go get a move, make a move, and get somebody. Preferably for me, it would be Chapman. I've said that a million times, but that bullpen's going to keep blowing games, and they're going to keep hovering around 500. And a month from now, we'll have this conversation after the trade deadline, and I'll tell you that whatever they do, I don't know what was the right thing. Um, how many years between 2015 and this year? It hasn't been that many actually, but there have been a few years, and of course, I'm remembering the Chris Archer trade where they convinced themselves they were in it, and they really weren't in it. And they listened to the guys on the MLB network who claim that everyone's in it. It's for the fans, everyone, you got to be in it. And they really weren't in it. And then that trade was disastrous. Um, so, they might convince themselves that they're still in it and make a move. And if they make a move for a closer, as long as they don't give up, if they're still hovering around 500, and these other teams, the Phillies and the Cubs and the Padres, and they're all still out in front of them. Um, I don't want to see them give up any of their prospects because that would be a waste of a prospect, unless they're getting a guy that's got multiple years left on a contract. But like a guy like Chapman, if they keep waiting, well, you might as well forget it. Because if you're hovering around 500 and you're bringing in a rental guy, um, why trade one of your prospects at that point? Wait till the offseason and make moves there. I hate that we're at the halfway point, and this is the conversation we're having because I'm telling you, a month and a half ago, I was convinced they were. I'm not saying they were going to definitely make it, but a month and a half ago, maybe even just a month ago, I was convinced they were going to be in the hunt. They were going to make some moves, and they were going to be active. And now I don't know that that would be the prudent move because of just again, Bill Parcells. You are what your record says you are, and their record says they're a 500 ball club. Um, maybe they catch a hot streak. Maybe they sweep the Reds. Maybe they take 2 out of 3 in Philly. I don't think so, especially if Wheeler and Sanchez are pitching that series. Um, and maybe that gets the juices flowing, and then Cruz comes back with Griffin. But a lot of things have to start happening because as good as the offense has been, if the starters aren't going more than 5 or 6 on a good day, and that bullpen stays the way it is, it's going to be hard. And the bottom of the lineup, kills them once they get through the first 5 or 6 guys. So I don't know. I don't know. But, Phillies fans, she should be excited. Like, those are 3 games that were in the loss column with 5 minutes left on the clock, so to speak, 2 minutes left on the clock. And then at the 2-minute warning, the Phillies end up winning all 3 of those games. And that's when even veterans like Harper and Schwarber and Trey Turner, like that, everyone, you start to believe, hey, we're going to win these games. Like, we're not out of these games. Now, I think the Phillies need to make some moves. I think they need another, I know they need another starter. Um, for the regular season. Now you can get by with, as a matter of fact, you can do more than get by with Sanchez, Wheeler, and Lazardo when you get to the playoffs. But you got to get to the playoffs, and so I think another starter, not necessarily a big name guy, needs to come into Philly. Um, I think they probably can live with everything else. Would they like maybe another bat? I think probably. See, how many years in a row have we been saying they need an outfield bat? Um, so I mean, I think they would go for that if they could get a better second baseman than Bryson Stott, or a third baseman that's better than Alec Boehm. But again, you got to see what the trade market is. But I think the Phillies will be active in their effort to catch the Braves for the NL East. The Dodgers are steamrolling. Surprise, surprise. Over in the American League, the Yankees have overtaken the Rays, and they have a plus 110. The Yankees are really good. Um, and they got Jazz Chisholm out there with his two things by players that struck me as guys that'll never grow up. Jazz Chisholm goes out in the field with a lollipop. Now, is that any worse than UL Washington back in the day with a toothpick? No. The guys that are out there with sunflower seeds, and you can see them, they're spitting sunflower seeds. You don't see the big wads of tobacco as much these days. When I was a kid, you'd have guys out there spitting, and so you could argue, but he makes a dive for a ball, and that lollipop stick gets lodged. I mean, it was stupid. And Jazz Chisholm is a child. Let's face it. Um, the other one was Bryce Harper last night hits the game-winning home run, and the fans in Washington were chanting a derogatory cheer at him throughout the game out in the right field bleachers, and I'm sure they had some beverages. Not condoning what they were saying, but as he hits the home run and rounds first, he flips him the bird. First of all, I hate when adults flip people the middle finger. It's so elementary. Like, use the language. I'm not a prude. Like, say you can use whatever language you want, but flipping the bird, and while you're rounding first base, Bryce Harper came into the league as a young punk, and that punk has never left him. Now, I would take Bryce Harper on my team any day of the week because he runs through walls for you to win games, much like I always said about Garrett Cole when he was in Pittsburgh. But I could do without the childishness. And of course, he's a big labor. The players don't want a salary cap. And my buddy Paul Skeens on the Pirates keeps running his mouth about it. Um, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But that struck me, those two things, childishness from players. You're going to get, jeered and stuff if you're Harper, especially in Washington. I mean, come on, man. Anyway, I said the White Sox were going to go away. They're not setting the world on fire at 41 and 38, but they are in first place, tied for first place, percentage points ahead. Actually tied with percentage points too with Cleveland, but um, we'll see. No one in that division has a plus run differential. It's a bad division. Again, it used to be. And then it had a couple years of perking up. And speaking of bad divisions, the American League West equally bad. Seattle leads that division at 500, 41 and 41. Think about that, Pittsburgh fans. The Pirates would be in first place if they were in the American League West. Isn't it funny on perspective? But that is a bad division as well. So before I leave baseball, I noticed a proposal or part of a proposal that was made by the owners. And of course, the players are losing their minds. Paul Skeens was one of them. Much like other sports have done, they want to limit free agent contracts to a max of 5 years and $202 million dollars would be the maximum. I think I read that would be 15% of the salary cap. I might have that number wrong. You can check me on that. But um, look, these 9 and 10 year look at Bryce Harper's contract. The Phillies don't. They're going to hate that contract in a few years. It's going to be an albatross around their neck. The players love it because they'll get all that money they're guaranteed when they're way past their prime. So I get why the players are like, oh, actually, you can't, no, you can't limit the years. Yeah, sure you can. Sure, the owners could do it now, but you got to outbid each other in the current system. In a salary cap system, you wouldn't be sitting there trying to outbid everyone. There'd be a ceiling for it. And it would be a matter of which team wants to reach the ceiling, and then players would have choices. Why do players not see that? Hey, there's three teams that are offering me that max contract, and you get to pick where you think would be the best fit for you. Um, the players are just being stubborn about this, and it would help the middle of the pack guys make more money. But I liked it. 5 year max. Like I said, other sports have maxes on their free agent signings. Um, Baseball has just finally figured out that it's time to join the crowd. That sticking out from the crowd is not what's best for their sport. Um, and lock them out, man. Lock them out, and let the players sit there and not get paid and stew about that for a season. I don't care if it's a full season. Um, Baseball has been broken for a long time. Just looking at the Dodgers, 9 games out in front of their division foes. Um, the Yankees out in front. Um, Philadelphia making a move, all the big spenders, doing the usual. Other than the Mets, I'll end on this. Carlos Mendoza this morning. I'm taping Friday at 1 o'clock, June 26th. Carlos Mendoza, as far as I'm concerned, finally got his reprieve. He no longer has to manage that bunch of misfits in New York. The Mets fired him today. I don't know how it took this long. Unfortunately, the manager, whether it be his fault or not, when things go this badly, and they have been bad with the Mets, the manager takes the fall for that, usually long before this point. But if I was Mendoza, I would be like, whew, go home, spend some time with the family, relax. I got my money. And I don't have to put up with, what was it, 5 errors the other night. Just ridiculous stuff. So it's not always, the money teams don't always make it work out if they have poor management and just a bad mix of players. So, all right, on to some other stuff in the sports world. Sticking with the Pittsburgh theme, the Hoffman group out of Florida, bought the Pittsburgh Penguins, and a very poorly kept secret is that Mario Lemieux um, will have a role with this group, some type of role. And typically, everything that Lemieux has touched has turned to gold in Pittsburgh, starting with himself in his career. So nice to have him back in the mix. And this brings up now we're in the draft is coming up. And free agency and the trade market. Um, so this Hoffman guy already bought a house, I heard, in Squirrel Hill in the Pittsburgh area. So he's in it. I'm glad the Fenway Group is out. To me, that was a bad fit. I'm not saying they did everything poorly. They did get rid of Ron Hextall. Thank God that was bad. And brought Kyle Dubas in. So they certainly didn't ruin everything. It just seemed like a bad fit. And Lemieux wasn't involved. And it's so I was glad to see that go by the wayside. And this group, this guy in particular, seems very invested. And he couldn't say enough glowing things about Dan Muse, the head coach, and Kyle Dubas, the GM. And Dubas has had a pretty great last 2 years, getting this team built back up much quicker than anyone expected. I think most people figured that maybe Sidney Crosby was never going to see the playoffs again. And, they made the playoffs. It was a quick exit. The Flyers dispatched them. And when you watch the playoff series, you realize that this team is still a good distance away from being truly, truly competitive. But that was Dubas deserves all kinds of accolades for what he did there. Does the new owner coming in and be like just touting him to the max? Does that make Dubas say, "Oh man, geez, oh, you know, this guy's pumping me up. I better make a big move here to make my mark"? Um, I I'm going to say it for maybe like the 22nd time. I feel like Dubas is between a rock and a hard place. Still trying to work the rebuild because he realizes they are still a stretch away from where they need to be, and still trying to make them competitive for the end of the big three, and specifically Sidney Crosby's um, final years. So he's in such a hard position. So we'll see what he comes up with. Um, how about players flocking to the warm weather hockey towns, and which also coincide in a lot of cases with the lack of state income tax, which means you get to keep more of your dollars. Um, I kind of laughed it off when people started saying, a little while ago that, boy, this is going to become a problem. I think they're right. I think this is a problem. I think you got to find a way and I don't have the answer on it, but you've got to find a way to balance that so that those teams don't have such a major advantage in with the free agency and all that kind of stuff. So something to keep an eye on. Over to the NBA, they held their draft. The Sixers got LeBaron Philon out of Alabama, another guard. Which, look, it's a guard heavy league. That's the way the NBA is played these days. But I told you last week in this pick really sort of echoes that they just took the best guy that was left on the board. He's a bench guy. Um, Edgecombe and Maxey are going to be your starters. Philon has no chance of breaking that, but he can be a rotational guy. But I said it last week: the Sixers are who they are because of the Embiid contract and the Paul George contract that they are tied to. There is not much change going to happen in Philly other than a shuffling of the deck chairs, as they say. And the Philon draft pick was sort of, hey, we're going to take the best guy that was left at that point, regardless of position. Um, Carlos Boozer went third. I said I wasn't sure um, if his game, and I guess I'm wrong because a lot of the experts that I was reading think that he'll be a Kevin Love type, and Kevin Love had a pretty darn good career in the NBA. I'm still gonna believe it when I see it. That sort of that bully ball. I know there's more to his game, and maybe he wasn't utilizing at Duke in their offense, but we'll see. He went to I believe Memphis, right? Had the third pick. Um, Giannis, the Greek freak, is on to Miami. It just got to a point in Milwaukee. The two sides, Milwaukee decided, look, we're going to go in a different direction. They took that as far as they could. It didn't work out in terms of a championship, or did they win a championship? They made it to the finals. Did they win that championship? Maybe they did win one. That's how much I pay attention to the NBA. But he's off to the Heat. In college basketball, there was a big story, and it ties into the NBA. Dusty May, in the middle of June, which is really tough, he leaves Michigan in a tough spot. Dusty May decides to take the Dallas Mavericks job. And, I saw a lot of hand wringing and Dusty May threw he laid it out there. That, college basketball is in such a weird place and it's tough to do. Now, you did hear quotes from other guys like Billy Donovan when he left college, and then some of the ones that Rick Pitino didn't make. He didn't cut it in the NBA. Brad Stevens. You hear a lot of them say, and I mean, I believe this is obviously true, that the nice thing when you become an NBA coach, now I wouldn't want to coach professionals because I think it would be hard to get through to them. But they said, that's all I do. I coach my team. I coach my team. We go to practice. We have practice, have games. I coach my team. I don't have to go shake the hands of donors and alumni. I don't have to be on the recruiting trail. I don't have to be paying attention to everyone else's roster because I know that the portal's going to open up, and I want to, I don't have to try and help negotiate contracts with college kids. And so I get that part of it. I don't deny that college basketball and college sports in general is in a bad spot right now. We all know that. I've talked about it ad nauseum. But is it not possible that Dusty May took the money? I think he took the money. And yeah, he's going to have a few less headaches. Although I would think again. Now he said about coaching Cooper Flagg, who's going to be a superstar in the NBA, arguably is already. Um, eh, like I get that, and they drafted Morez Johnson that he coached at Michigan, so there's going to be some connections. I'm sure the way of life and not having to glad hand all the alumni and worry about all that stuff. I'm not suggesting that's not a factor, but I think it's possible. Dusty May was up for the Louisville job, and there were some things he didn't like. He took the money at Michigan. He took the money at Michigan. Now, he's a great coach. He won him a national championship. He was the best hire of that cycle, no doubt about it. No offense to my buddy Pat Kelsey down at Louisville. Um, but he was the best. Dusty May was the best hire. I said he was going to be the best hire. And that was one I got right. But I think he took the money. I think we could sit here and try and analyze it and overanalyze it. I think he took the money. And again, and maybe an easier lifestyle with not all the handshaking and recruiting and doing all that kind of stuff. The flip side of that coin, it's an 82 game season, and then if you make the playoffs, more after that. Then you got to get ready for the draft. So I don't know that and again, trying to coach some of these prima donnas, although you have prima donnas now getting paid in college too. So I don't know. It was just when I heard it, I was like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Like he's taking the money. Now, who does Michigan get? I saw people throw out Jawan Howard's name. Why would you do that? Why would that name even be on your list? It didn't work out. He's a great alumni or alumnus of your school, a great former player, someone that you can cherish. It's a little bit like Kenny Payne. Kenny Payne soiled his image at Louisville with that disastrous coaching tenure. And before that, he was a beloved national championship player for Louisville. And Jawan Howard, now he didn't poop the bed like Kenny Payne did, but why would he even be on your list? He can't be on the list. But it throws you on a lurch. These teams are in some of their summer workouts right now. Like you're preparing for the season. Now, the players on the roster, and I think that window is now open. They had what is it, a 15-day window or a 10-day window that if they want to leave because their coach left, they can. It doesn't sound like they're going to lose much, if anything, off the roster. So whoever would take that job is coming into a roster that's pretty darn good that arguably would be favored to win the Big Ten again and contend for a Final Four. So I don't think there would be a lack of suitors per se, but and this is again, it's not to go on this rant again, but they bitch and moan about the players. Oh, the players are greedy, and now we have to pay these college kids. But here's the coaches. So Dusty May saw a better opportunity, whether it was for money or other reasons. He saw a better opportunity, and he said, "Bye, bye, Michigan. See ya." And I don't know if they made a deal that he doesn't get his buyout, or I'm sure he doesn't because he's leaving. It's not where they're firing him. But now does Michigan go poach a coach from someone else? And now that team's on the lurch. And so they go down to one of the mid-majors. Hey, we're going to take your coach. And now that mid-major's on the lurch. You see what I'm getting at. The fact that coaches can leave at any point in time is a problem. And it's not just the players. I hate the portal. The players go for 1 year here, 1 year here, 1 year here. They got to fix that. They got to have a collective bargaining where they can sign multiple year contracts. Give the guy money so that he knows he's going to get paid a competitive amount, but he's going to stay at that school bare minimum 2 years. But the coaches leave all the time, and this is just another example of it. And now Michigan's sitting here in mid-June with a great roster, and they don't have anyone leading the team. Um, and like I said, it could lead to a trickle down effect until you get to the mid majors. And then the mid majors sitting there saying, well, we'll just, we'll put the assistant coach as the head coach because, we're out of luck. So a weird situation there. Um, the College World Series ended. Oklahoma 2-1 over North Carolina. I got to tell you, as a USC fan, I watched North Carolina run through that to the finals, and I thought, man, that could have been USC 2 outs away from eliminating North Carolina and couldn't get the job done. And again, here's the bad part of sports. It definitely needs fixed. USC, the paint's not even dry on their, putting the last touch on their record to end the season. And you got players hitting the portal. And man, you just went to a super regional final, and we're 2 outs away from Omaha, and you don't want to finish the job at USC. That's look, again, I'm not totally absolving the kids, but I think they get bad advice from adults. I don't understand that, but anyway. But Oklahoma, I thought it was interesting, and I think college is getting like that in all sports: basketball, football, baseball. Now I can't speak about the Olympic sports and things like that, but you got to get hot. Oklahoma had a losing record in SEC play. Um, and so before, the people that complain, oh, you should, if you have a losing record, you shouldn't make the tournament. Well, here you had a team that had a losing record in their conference and won the national title. So that really puts a dent in that argument, which I would have bought into, quite frankly. Um, but anyway, my point is, if you get hot at the end of the season, that carries a lot of weight. And I think you're going to start seeing that. Maybe in football, one of these years, we're going to see a team that maybe has 2 losses, but they were early losses and then they got hot and got on a run. Um, you already see it in basketball. Now, Michigan, certainly you could argue, was the best team all season long, and they won the national title. But a lot of teams get hot. Now, again, not always, but they make a run. Maybe they don't make it to the Final Four, but they get to an Elite Eight or to a Sweet 16 because they were hot at the end of the season. I think Texas comes to mind. Texas won a few games at the end of the season, enough to get in the tournament, won their first 4 game, and then end up in the Sweet 16. So, um, but I thought this Oklahoma baseball team was an example of that. They got hot at the right time, stayed hot, pitching was hot, and they win themselves a national title. And I did in my column, I said, wouldn't it be cool if there was no SEC teams in the baseball finals? I just can't get in my head that Oklahoma is an SEC team. I don't have that problem with Texas. Texas, it's right away. Yeah, Texas SEC. Now, I still Oklahoma just seems like Big Eight. You want to go back to the old days. So I was obviously wrong on that. Another SEC baseball title, this time from Oklahoma. But really fun event. I enjoyed watching college baseball this year. I didn't watch it religiously at the beginning because basketball was still going. The tournament was happening, March Madness and so forth. But I started watching as many USC games as I could that were covered. Um, and it's a pretty fun product, and I think it's gaining traction, quite frankly, in the college sports world. So, hey, the U.S. lost a World Cup match. I don't care. They made it through anyway. That was a meaningless match last night, which again is sort of a weird part to the World Cup. Um, Maybe it should be like once you're eliminated, you go home. Turkey had been eliminated, but they still play it because you play through your bracket. You play the round robin, and Turkey scored a late goal to beat the U.S. The only thing for the U.S. you would hope it doesn't that doesn't put them in a bad frame of mind, and but the World Cup, I'm still not coming to your watch party. I just don't care enough about soccer. You know, but anyway, enjoy it. Those of you that are enjoying the World Cup. Um, Last thing in my little middle part of the podcast here, and then we'll see if I can wake up Spicoli. Um, the PGA Tour came out starting in 2028. They're going to have a reworked system, and I like it. I think the players like it. I think it's going to be good for fans and players alike. It is going to be no more of these elevated tournaments where it's a small field with no cuts. Professional golf, you're supposed to have a cut, and they're going to go back to 120 man fields. The better players are going to play more often. I'm not sure I followed all of that, but I did see Scotty Scheffler say now it'll be harder for guys to win tournaments because the top players in the world are going to be playing in more of them. Um, so I like that part of it. There's going to be none of those sponsor exemptions where, hey, we really like Ricky Fowler. So we're going to invite him to this tournament. Not if Ricky didn't earn his way. The thing that's cool about golf, professional golf, is the meritocracy of it all. If you play well, you make the cut. If you play well, you get your tour card. If you play well, you get invited to the next tournament. If you play well at the majors, you get an exemption for X number of years for finishing top 10 or top 12 or whatever it may be. That's meritocracy. And that's what makes golf sort of stand out a little bit from most sports. So I like all of this. And then you're going to get to the end of it all. And instead of the FedEx Cup, which I didn't mind, I'm one of the few people that haven't minded that. Um, you're going to have this championship series, I think they're going to call it. It's going to be match play. I love that. Match play with the best players in the world going head to head. Because match play is such a different beast. Some of those guys will be better at it than others. I love it. I think, when they played those match play matches that were for charity and, made for TV, it was fun. Now, it got a little bit old because they overdid it. But I think the fans will love it, watching match play, and especially on TV. If you get a regular tournament situation where the leader's 8 shots in front of everyone, it's kind of like you start falling asleep because it just doesn't matter. But match play on TV will be fantastic. Like, and they'll have different matches. So if this one's a little bit out of hand, hey, we're going to go to these close matches. I love it. Match play to end the season and crown a champion. And then in the fall, so another thing, you can get relegated, much like, and I'm not a soccer fan. I think I've made that clear. But I know that the European soccer leagues and the professional soccer leagues, they do the relegation where you can drop down, and plus, I watched what's his name on Apple TV, Ted Lasso. So you can get relegated, but golf is going to have that now. So you either make that top tier that gets to go to the tournaments, or you get relegated to these other smaller events. Um, but in the fall, where the fall season has been just kind of like, people are just out there playing, making some money, no one's paying attention to it. You will now be able to play your way back in the fall. I like everything about. I'm sure there's going to be some quirks and kinks to it that maybe don't quite fit. But I think it was a smart move, and with Live Golf completely fizzling out. Now there's another story for another day how they're going to handle allowing or not allowing those players like the DeChambeaus and Roms and Dustin Johnson back in or not back in. Joaquin Neiman. But that's a story for another day. But I just think with the live stuff fizzling out, it's all eyes are on the PGA Tour. And I think this was such a smart move. And I have not heard one complaint from any player. Tiger spoke about it. Rory spoke about it. Scheffler spoke about it. I've heard some of the lower limb guys have spoken about it. And I think it's going to be fantastic for golf going forward. The Travelers Championship is an elevated event as we finish out 2 more years or a year and a half of this stuff. Good leaderboard. I will say that Hovland, Scheffler. Hovland, when I last looked this morning, was on top. Scheffler, I think, was 2 shots back, and Batia was in there. Justin Rose was in there. A lot of good players. A lot of them piggybacking off last week at the U.S. Open, um, and kind of continuing their good play. So um, we'll see how that all plays out. So, all right, let me see. Cue up Spicoli. He's snoozing. Hey, bud, what's your problem? Thank you, Spicoli. Um, I'm going to stick with golf for my rant this week. My problem. Um, the thing I always liked about golf is it's different from other sports. And I think I talked about this on the podcast last year, maybe 2 years ago. I don't know. So at some point, I talked about it. Um, the thing with a lot of golf courses now, guys taking like boom box, or at least I would have called it a boom box back in the day, boom boxes in their golf cart, and they're jamming music as they play. And to each their own, to each their own. I think I know I told this story on here about a year ago. I played through a group and they were jamming music. And hey, I'm sorry, do you want us to turn this down while you play? I said, no, that's not bad. Because first of all, I'm not serious enough or good enough to let a little bit of music affect my swing. My swing affects my swing, so I don't need the music. Didn't bother me, but I will say this again, as I said back then. One of the cool things for me about being on a golf course, and people say, boy, you play by yourself a lot. Well, first of all my buddies that play golf moved out of the area. Now, I did connect with a guy yesterday as I was coming off the course. He was going on the course, and we're gonna hook up and play some this summer, an old high school buddy. But I do. There's something about going out on the golf course. It's peaceful. It's quiet. Um, where I'm at in Pennsylvania, you're surrounded by mountains. It's beautiful. I think golf courses in general are beautiful. You get a pond here and a tree line there, and so I like that golf is a game, and tennis is that way too. If you're good enough and make it far enough, where quiet is important for your concentration. Now, again, I'm not good enough to let that kind of stuff bother me, but um, but I love being on the golf course and just having it be peaceful and quiet. I'm a little bit that way when I go for my walks. Um, Everyone else is with their earbuds, and my buddies that work out and stuff too. My friend Scott listens to this podcast while he's working out, and I'm sure my voice just makes him go the extra mile when he's working out. But when I go for walks, I like to I hear the nature, I hear the birds chirping and all this and that, and it's just peaceful. So here's my rant. At the U.S. Open last week, the thing that always has set golf apart, golf fans, there's a certain respect and a certain sort of code of conduct that golf fans have always had. And that's why everyone laughed at Happy Gilmore when Adam Sandler released Happy Gilmore. It was the anti country club approach to golf. But what I saw and what I saw at the Ryder Cup last year was ugly. Ugly. Yeah, absolutely, you're cheering for the American team. Obviously, that's why you have home field advantage, home course advantage. But the stuff they were yelling at the European players, many of whom are great guys, most of them are great guys, and support the PGA Tour and play in America most of their season, was just flat out ugly. And last week, Wyndham Clark was out in front, and of course, Wyndham Clark he punched the locker at Oakmont, which is a revered country club out in Pittsburgh, and um, you know that was a bad look. And I guess he's not always maybe not one of the more. I don't know if he's friendly. I don't know the guy, but okay. So he had it, but he's apologized for it. He said coming into this week that he hoped that a year removed from that it was a bad deal for him and he was wrong. Like he said all the right things. So he's leading this tournament. Scotty Scheffler's trying to chase him down, among other players. I've never heard a golf crowd. Now, sitting at home, I root for certain players, and if the guy that's beating that player I'm rooting for, and they go into rough or whatever, I'm like, oh, okay, now my guy has a chance yet. Um, but if I was at the tournament, maybe I think it because I'm rooting for Scotty Scheffler or whoever it is I'm rooting for. But as Wyndham Clark, and it happened every hole. If he hit a bad shot, you'd hear applause. As his ball would start to trickle off the greens, you could hear the crowd audibly start to, yeah, 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 yeah. Um, Come on, man. Golf crowds do better. I'm sick of the guys that yell mashed potatoes when they hit a drive, but give me that because that's just stupid. That's just, that first of all, that was funny the first time you heard it. It was like, did someone just yell mashed potatoes? Like that was funny when you first heard it, and then they just kept doing it. Same with the guy when I was a kid. He'd show up at all the golf tournaments, John 316, and he had his rainbow wig on. And then that was kind of, oh, that's neat, that's funny and whatever. And then it got old because he kept doing it, and other people kept doing it. But that's just stupid. But this is just mean spirited. And golf is supposed to be different than the other sports. Um, in football, basketball, and baseball, for 100 years, you boo the opposition. You boo them. But this would be akin to when a football player for the other team gets hurt, and you do sometimes hear it every once in a while, where the home team claps because yes, that guy's out of the game. Um, and that's just that's what this would be like is when someone gets hurt you cheer them that they're hurt. um and I don't understand. I have my theory, which everyone thinks that I always point to the president, but I think when Donald Trump came into, and this is back his first term, um and made talking bad about people and cheering other people's losses and making fun of people for their shortcomings became part of our. He made it part of our lexicon, and other people realized, hey, cool, we can start saying this kind of stuff. And I'm not talking about words. I think that's where the other side of the aisle is too worried about. Oh, you can't say those words. That's right. Now, give me a break. Um, so both sides are guilty of it, but I just think Trump made it popular again to be a jackass. Because look where it's got him to the White House. And so I think a lot of these fans have picked up on it. And I think, and especially now Wyndham Clark's an American. That's what made this the Ryder Cup ugliness I thought was terrible. But I could at least write that off to, well, they're rooting for America. Now they're doing it in a poor way, but they're rooting for their country. Um, Wyndham Clark is an American player on American soil that was essentially being booed. Now, if it was because of the locker situation, or you know, um, there are players on tour I don't like, but I wouldn't go out there if I was at the event. Now, I might sit in my living room and say, "Oh, good, he's in the rough. He's going to bogey this hole, and the guy I'm rooting for is going to have a better shot." But to outwardly say that, and that's disappointing because again, going back full circle to how I started this rant, golf is supposed to be different. It's you go out there and you police yourself first of all, and there's peace and quiet. You're out just my background right now. I'm looking at on my screen on your screen is my local golf course. It is beautiful and it's peaceful. And golf fans always had a certain etiquette. Golf players have certain etiquette that they follow. Um, I'd love to go golf in my t-shirt and gym shorts, but that's not the way golf is supposed to be. You're not supposed to be out there in jean shorts, and you can call that snobby country club crap all you want. I like the fact that golf is different that way, and golf fans are supposed to be different, um, and that's certainly not what we saw. Um, last week at the U.S. Open, and it made me feel bad. I felt bad for Wyndham Clark and was actually happy that he won. I was rooting for Scheffler, not strongly. Like, I'm not a giant Scheffler fan, but I'd like to see him win again here, and I would have liked to have seen him win the career Grand Slam, which I think would have been cool. Um, but by the end of the last round on Sunday, I was actually pulling for Wyndham Clark to win that thing, just to shut those people up, because I thought it was ridiculous. And for the record, I thought he couldn't have handled it after the tournament any better, including days after when he went on all the talk shows. I thought he said the right things. His other players stuck up for him, so apparently he's not that big of a jackass, because Scheffler stuck up for him. He thought it was bad, and a lot of the other players spoke out about it. So golf fans need to do better. It's not Happy Gilmore. It's your president might say rude things about people and denigrate people, but that doesn't mean that you should. Golf is supposed to be different. You want to act like a jackass at an event? Go to a hockey game. Go to a football game, where jackassism runs amok. But golf is supposed to be different. Call me snobby. Trust me, I'm as far from a country club snob as you could possibly get. But you're supposed to be better, and so you need to be better. All right, on to my random off-topic topic. By the way, the time machine, the 8-track player needed some work, and you'd be surprised. I had to take it to a couple different places, because 8-track players, it's tough to find people that know how to work on an 8-track player, and then especially when you bring a time machine, they kind of give you the crooked eye. But I did find a place, so it'll be back next week, working 100%, or as 100% as my technology will allow it to work. But anyway, random off-topic topic. How about a little bit of TV and entertainment? So my Twitter feed began being filled with this Tom Cruise um, sort of sneak preview of his new movie coming out in the fall called Digger, which apparently is a wacky comedy. And he put a compilation together of clips from all the movies he's been in. And man, I watched that clip. I've watched it 10 times because it dawned on me. I would say this. Now, I know there's always argument about this. He's probably the best actor of my lifetime. It's certainly in terms of, maybe not in terms of winning awards, but in terms of making entertaining movies. Um, he's always great. He's such a cool guy in the movies, from all the Mission Impossible stuff, going way back to Risky Business, Cocktail. Rain Man was a different kind of beast. I love him in A Few Good Men. He played off Jack Nicholson as well as anyone possibly could have. Um, and it just, as I watched that clip, I was like, man, this guy has made just one banger after another. Um, yes, there have been a couple duds. Every actor has a dud here or there. How about his role in Tropic Thunder, where he put on the bald wig? Everyone had said he had too much of an ego to do a part like that, and then requested of Ben Stiller that he wanted to do the dance scene, where he's kind of making fun of himself. Now, I know, look, the Scientology stuff and all that, whatever. I don't worry about it. Everyone has their own beliefs and all that. What I know is when Tom Cruise is on my TV or movie screen, I am entertained, 99% of the time. So I can't wait to see this Digger movie. But when that started coming across my feed and I watched it 2, 3, 4, 10 times, I'm like, man, this guy has had quite a career, of entertaining people. So that's one of my random off-topic topics. And then some TV reviews for you. I haven't done too many of these lately. Um, I got to tell you, I'm confused. I can't remember. I think a couple of these were on HBO Max and a couple of these were on Apple. Um, the first one I want to talk about, I just watched it. I'm a little behind the times. I know this was out for a little while. DTF St. Louis. Jason Bateman and the dude that played the sheriff in Stranger Things. Um, I like Jason Bateman's another guy. I like 99% of what he does. Um, and this one certainly took a weird turn as it went along. DTF is down to bleep, um, which is akin to a lot of these Tinder websites and things like that, where you're looking for a hookup. And these two guys were married, it took a winding turn, especially to the end of it. Um, Weird. Entertaining, yes. Did I like it? Ultimately, yes. Was it super weird? Yeah, kinda. Um, but and Jason Bateman kind of going off the beaten path on this one in his role, which he's done a couple times now lately. I stopped watching Cape Fear last night. I made the decision I'm not watching it anymore. To me, Cape Fear. I was so anxious when I saw this because I loved the movie back in the day. Um, this is too slow in plotting. I might go back to it and try to get through another episode. Um, I think it's slow in plotting, and there's too much. It's hard to keep track of, what's going on, and I gave up on it last night and decided I wasn't going to watch it anymore. I might go back to it, but you can make your own decision on that. But it was too slow in plotting. A show, and this one is on Apple. I think Cape Fear was on Apple as well. Maximum pleasure guaranteed. I'm super into this. Unfortunately, all the episodes aren't out yet. It's on a week to week thing, like a regular TV show would be. Um, and my main character, the gal, and I'm rooting for her. A show. I know a show is good when I'm rooting for one of the characters, and I'm rooting for this gal. She just got arrested, so things right now are looking bleak for her. But it's entertaining. Also, it goes into a little dark places here and there, but nothing like DTF. But I've really enjoyed. I think it's up to the eighth episode, I believe. But maximum pleasure guaranteed on Apple TV. I would give a thumbs up to. And my last one, How to Make a Killing, which was on HBO Max. And it's almost like a movie, really. Um, I think they refer to it as a limited series. I forget I don't think they refer to it as a movie, but anyway, it's essentially like a movie, about an hour and 40 minutes. Um, and it was really entertaining. I'll give you the gist, like the general idea. This guy his mom got pregnant when she was 18, and she was from this really well-to-do family. And I don't know if it was her. I guess it was her father. Said, "Hey, you're not going to have that baby under this roof." And she said, "Well, I'm having this baby." So she got booted from the family, and she had the kid, and this kid finds out that he is actually an heir to the family wealth, and and so. It starts out with him in a jail cell talking to a priest because he's on death row, and it goes through how he killed all the siblings so that he would keep moving up the ranks to get to. And then another girl comes into to the story that he had been friends with as a kid and liked as a kid. It's really good. And it's a one shot deal. So if you're one of those people that's like, I don't feel like watching episode after episode after episode, you'll like that part of it. It's a one shot deal, about an hour and 45 minutes, something like that. But it was really good. It was really entertaining. So there are some TV reviews from yours truly that you can take or leave. I think TV watching is up to the watcher. So anyway, I will be back. It will be July 4th weekend. When I come back next week, we'll take some more looks at baseball and all the stuff, see how the Americans are doing in the World Cup, because I'm closely watching the World Cup. But and whatever else we can dig up as well, and we'll get the time machine. It's ready to roll now. Got it back from the shop, so we'll have that up and running next week. So enjoy the summer weather. It's going to get hot here in Pennsylvania, and as always, guys, be nice to one another.